The Radicals and Progressive Alliance is buckling over the ongoing Palestine-Israel tensions. But who will come out victorious? I don't know about you, but I'm poised for that fallout. Welcome to the Canadian Culture Wars Report. I'm Melanie Bennett. My co-host Shannon Boucher is not with me today. I am so low. In today's episode, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. Unions turn on Fred Hahn, and a bit of update on the Capital Pride debate. Let's take a peek under the ideological bonnet, shall we? First up, Fred Hahn. CUPE National has called for the resignation of its most visibly radical executive, Fred Hahn, this week over reposting an anti-Semitic meme. Now, I'm going to play it so you can judge for yourself.
The claims center around a video that he shared on Facebook. He just reposted it without comment. I'm not going to show you the clip because I'm going to get a strike, but I'll explain it. So it starts out with this young man. It announces that he's diving at the Olympics and representing Israel. He has a Star of David on his arm, which appears to be the same color and design as the Israeli flag. At no point is the diver identified as being Jewish. He is identified as being the Israeli diver. That's it. He jumps into the air and then turns into a bomb. There's an explosion and people running away.
It's not the first time Fred Hahn has been in the news for his extremism.
Okay, thanks so much.
Fred, does CUPE stand shoulder to shoulder with Antifa?
It's weird when people ask me about Antifa because, do you think we're pro-fascist? That's weird. Okay, we're done now.
So you do. So you do stand shoulder to shoulder with Antifa.
Well, would you expect us to be pro-fascist? Are you pro-fascist? Are you pro-fascist?
No. Antifa is
anti-fascist.
A militant organization.
You're either pro-fascist or you're anti-fascist.
So CUPE stands shoulder to shoulder with Antifa then.
I know.
I have that right?
I know. Have precedence over parents for decision making of kids?
Thanks for letting me
Should
know.
unions and teachers be able to make decisions for kids? Or should their parents?
But it's certainly the first time that I've seen any level of pushback from CUPE execs or their members. The calls for his resignation came after a video circulated on social media of MP David Piccini, Minister of Labour, telling Mr. Hahn to stop being anti-Semitic. So here's the clip.
What we're seeing today is a Labour leader. You've got to represent your members. And what you have said
I need you to know that I
Jews,
am representing my members, and I'm not talking about Jews. I'm talking about the state. I am talking about the state of Israel, and I represent 290,000 workers. I am representing 290,000 workers.
Thanks very much. You have to stop hating on Jews.
Thanks very much.
You have to.
This is about the state
My
of
door
Israel.
will remain open to your members, but you have to stop hating Jews. And
I
you
get
have
that you're
to
filming this, and I get that you're trying to do it for
stand up to the
You are
office
the
you hold.
Minister of Labour,
And you're a Labor leader.
and I represent
your members deserve better. They
290,000.
deserve better
They
than
just
you.
re-elected me.
They deserve better than you.
Look, criticizing the state of
It's
Israel.
about how you behave.
Then Doug Ford said this.
If that's it, I just want to give my minister, David Piccini, a big shout out for his comments about Fred Hahn yesterday. I'm proud of you, David, and this guy's been a bully for 20 years. And do you know what's funny? I'm getting messages on my phone from CUPE members saying his comments have been disgusting. In my opinion, he's a disgusting human being anyways, but that's here nor there. You know, he says he's bigoted comments. It's unacceptable here in Ontario. We have 110 nationalities speaking 200 languages, and we all need to get together. And I encourage CUPE Canada, someone has to discipline this guy, and I encourage the workers next time a vote comes, vote this character out, because in my opinion, he's just a terrible, terrible human being. Thank you.
Since then, CUPE Hamilton, CUPE Locals 2977, 3906, CUPE flight attendants, they've all called for Fred to resign as of last Thursday, August 22nd. Of course, Fred would never voluntarily give up power. No socialist worth his salt would ever do that. So Fred clearly declines to step down. He says, "I want to be clear, I utterly reject the charge of anti-Semitism Anyone who knows and works with me knows it to be a lie. It remains my strongly held view that it is a terrible mistake and anti-Semitic to conflate abhorrent actions by the State of Israel with Jewish humanity or identity. In a nutshell, his statement is, I'm not going anywhere, plus you're the anti-Semitic ones. It's classic Darvo. I don't think there's any sense of self-reflection because this is about revolution. He's the ideal revolutionary. So Hahn is an identitarian. Everything is about identity groups. So the fact that he is distinguishing those two things, I think is a misnomer. I think, the identity group is always guilty of whatever charge has been thrown in their direction, just like the idea of whiteness. So me, as a so-called white person of European descent, would be guilty of the crimes of certain Europeans in the past. So why he would suddenly make that distinction with Jewish people is just a distraction. So the real question here is, why is a labor union leader on behalf of a trade union, in his capacity as leader of said trade union, involved so heavily in protests about an international conflict? What does this have to do with labor rights of members that he represents? So the answer, quite clearly, is it has nothing to do with it at all. Like I said in the beginning, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. To understand the revolutionary mind, you need to read Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals, basically the tactical Bible for leftists and radicals across the West. People like Hahn, Anti-Hate Network, groups like Queers for Palestine, or Antifa will pretty much follow Saul Alinsky's 12 Rules for Radicals. One of those rules, in a nutshell, is the issue is never the issue is always the revolution. The true objective is never what they're calling for, aka the issue. It's never the issue or the cause, but rather the accumulation of power to achieve a larger revolutionary goal. Issues like anti-racism, feminism, LGBTQIA+ rights, they're merely a means to an end rather than the ends in themselves. So the true objective is to dismantle the existing power structure and create a new revolutionary society. The issue is never the issue. It's about accumulating power to achieve a revolutionary goal. This mindset is evident in the actions of radical activists who often prioritize building a mass power base over addressing the issue specific at hand. Take Queers for Palestine. It's not about queer people. It's about socialist revolution. And to achieve said revolution, all socialists must unite in solidarity. So that brings me to the second mantra. No one is free until we're all free. In reference to Hahn's imminent demise or lack thereof, we have this teacher here, which perfectly describes exactly what I'm talking about. This is Miss Anne-Marie Longpour, teacher, reader, de-streamer, radically pro-kid, interested in book love and ungrading, here to learn. No one is free until all of us are free. Well, what did she say about Fred? I stand with Fred and will not be silent on the Zionist lobby as the Zionist lobby tries to ruin him for fighting for Palestine rights. QP National must rescind the calls for Fred's resignation. Again, teachers, nothing to do with Palestine rights. It's a conflict overseas. I mean, you could talk to some of the government officials, but this is not about Palestinian rights. This is about the revolution. So like I said, the goal is to accumulate power, not to achieve a particular social or political change. So in this case, the issue is not Palestine. The issue is not queer rights. These radicals use apparent issues or causes as pretext to advance their own agendas, often inflaming emotions and neutralizing opponents. And we see that in school with silencing parents who are dissident on some of the sexualization of children, some of the inappropriate queer theory that we see. The current LGBTQIA+ cause is indistinguishable from other revolutionary causes. The reason for pride, which is gay rights, marriage equality, inclusion into normative society, if you want to call it that, and not being discriminated against, they've largely been achieved. Some of that might be rolling back now because of some of the queer revolutionary lobby, but let's ignore that for now. It's becoming increasingly obvious to even everyday people that Pride is a queer revolution, and that queer revolutionaries must, under all circumstances, align themselves or find allies. Notice the warlike language, the allies in the revolution, with other cultural socialist revolutionaries. Other cultural socialist revolutionary causes like the Palestinian liberation. And this has nothing to do with being gay whatsoever. In fact, the queer revolution is distinctly anti-gay. They have a word for this, homonormative, the heresy of being a normal person who wants to live and function in a stable, productive society that accepts norms and standards, and you just happen to be gay. That's unacceptable because it's not revolutionary, it's normative. I want to play you a clip from a visiting academic at the University of Victoria, chair in transgender studies, where he talks about trans normativity. The principle is the same as homonormativity, is whatever's normative is fine. But the point is that if you're normative and gay or normative and trans, if you just want a normal life, the revolution rejects you.
So just a bit of an overview of the project. So in existing literature, transnormativity is presented as a hegemonic ideology that structures transgender experience, identification, and narratives into a hierarchy of legitimacy. And this is from Johnson, who is pretty widely cited in the literature on transnormativity. And what Johnson is really saying is that trans people are kind of produced in relation to the norms of medicalization. So whether or not trans people want to engage in the medicalization of transness, whether we want to medically transition or not, we're kind of held in relation to those norms. And this is what produces transnormativity as a hegemonic regulatory ideology. And a lot of the existing literature has kind of concerned itself with what I kind of term transnormative subjecthood. So it's kind of using transnormativity as an analytic concept to say something about the ways in which people uphold transnormativity in different systemic and structural contexts. And this is, often kind of located itself within kind of film and media and kind of culture.
But hey, it's not just Fred who's engaged in the revolution. Here we have Julius Arscott of OPS-U, bluntly demanding a socialist revolution.
Elected to the Executive Board of the Ontario Public Service Employees Union, Julius continues as President of OPS-U Local 532, based in the Ministry of the Environment. He remains a vocal proponent of Palestinian rights and for class struggle unionism. So, without further ado, give it up for Julius.
Good afternoon, sisters, brothers, comrades, and friends. International Workers' Day, May the 1st, represents more than a celebration of past gains, such as higher wages, improved benefits, better working conditions, and shorter hours. International Workers' Day signifies the class struggle to abolish capitalism and to establish a system which is free of exploitation and oppression. Only by socialist revolution can the immense majority of humanity create the basis of freedom from want, for a bottom-up economic and political democracy, for a world cleanse of national and gender-based tyranny. It is the only way to save nature and humanity from the growing threat of extinction caused by a system dominated by carbon energy profiteers and their servants in state power. May Day is a fiery revolt against a dying system. It is a bold act of rebellion against minority class rule. It is an affirmation of the destiny of the working class to build socialism on the ashes of the old order.
And here we have Lana Payne. This is the national president for Unifor, clearly advocating for the queer revolution. So just another revolutionary. Then we have the September 2023 leaked union video where union execs and members discussing how to crush the parental rights movement.
I think here and what we had done a few years ago, they can easily be demoralized. Their confidence can be just ripped out from under them. And that's what we have to do by building large, mass united fronts in all our cities, towns with as broad a grouping of people as possible.
Our hope is that we're actually going to steal a couple of their tactics in that when they are gathering for their tailgate party in the mall parking lot, we've got a couple of seasoned activists who've already said that they're willing to go over and take some pictures of license plates and these are people who are willing to do this. They're people who are seasoned, and make sure that they know that they're being watched, that they're not doing this in secret, that people are noticing what they're up to. Is it possible that the oil filer CLC could have a list of some legal support numbers from across Ontario? Even it doesn't have to be from Hamilton, but like if somebody for some reason gets picked up, it would be good that if they could have a 1-800 number that they could write on their arm or something like that, so that they know they've always got a lawyer that they can call. So that would be useful. I'm not saying it will happen. We're going to try and stop it from happening, but we have some seasoned activists who have been used to that in the past, and they wanted to make sure that we had that option if we had to.
And the parental rights rhetoric has sort of come to the fore, and the disturbing thing I have to say about all of this is, while it's really easy to sort of say, well, these are fringe voices, these are, the convoy, writ large, etc. All of it is being validated and platformed and echoed by provincial governments and by the federal Conservative Party. We see in Manitoba right now actual bus ads from Conservative candidates because they're in a provincial election using parents' rights rhetoric as the hook. It's really crappy. And really, I think that Shawnee's point about trying to flip the script on the rhetoric is really, really important, and not let them set the agenda.
The first of this kind that I've seen here in Canada, of this super broadly and coordinated hate right across the country. And so what we're seeing is a far-right extreme response to inclusive education. Teachings that have anything to do with the 2S LGBTQI community, with a heavy response in particular to trans education, anything to do with that in the schools, and indoctrinating children, in regards to anything to do with queer information, queer rainbow community, all various ways that we want to reference anything other than what the far right sees as appropriate. And so we are wanting to show a very strong response countering these protests, to show that they even think that there's a possibility of bringing what's happening other places here. We're going to be there to counter it every single step of the way.
And I also just want to speak to something that Vicky brought up, just about how we're opposing this and what we're up against. They've actually gotten quite a lot better organizing themselves despite all of these internal infighting. One of the reasons why we're having difficulty finding lots of accurate information on march routes, on who's exactly organizing, is not because they're disorganized, it's because they've gotten better at operational security. They're doing a lot more things that's tighter and harder to infiltrate and harder to track. So I just think it's important to kind of keep that in context, that they are able to, at this moment, rise above their internal discord to build a very, very big movement. The fascists are organizing in the streets. I'm a researcher at Carleton, and my focus is fascism in Canada, and the signs that I've seen that we're rising, that this is far more than just like a far-right transphobic protest. They are fundamentally racist. They are fundamentally anti-union. They are fundamentally queer and transphobic. And it's just a matter of time before they come to us. And the only way, the best way that the fascists have been stopped in the last 100 years has been when we unite in massive numbers in the streets.
The only suggestion that I would probably have as an update, if there's anything that could be added, is maybe reminding and giving some tips about the potential effects of what could happen as doxing. We've seen that with a lot of fascist, white supremacist organizations and groups that have been doxing a lot of, progressive folks that have been organizing in their regions in combating hate in many ways. If there's a way that the information you have could be updated to how to deal with doxing, how to protect yourself from being doxed, especially what could happen as ramifications long term.
If we stand up to the bully will decide what to do. They will fight, fright, or flight, fight, or fright. And so let's give them some fright on September 20th. so that on September 21st till whatever, that they're working on the flight tactic.
Is this the job of unions? Is this about protecting labor rights? Or are parents getting in the way of that revolution? So I'm going to post a link to the Union League video. I highly recommend that you spend the time to listen to what they have to say, because I think it's very, very telling. In fact, they talk about Beautiful Trouble, which is another Solinsky sort of 12 Rules for Radical tactical stuff in there. And that's not even including the rampant revolutionary action within teachers' unions in favors of so-called social justice education and queering the classroom. So I want to end this segment on this point. Is it within the scope and responsibility of a trade union to get involved in socialist revolution? A genuine question, and I think we need to ask ourselves this. I sincerely hope the current pushback we're seeing right now will lead to some meaningful reform in the power of unions and the corruption that has followed with all of this cultural socialist advancement. Okay, next up, Capital Pride. This, I believe, and if I'm wrong, tell me in the comments, but I believe this is supposed to be the last Pride March of the season, ending in Ottawa, Canada's capital. And there's been a lot of kerfuffle over there as well. So speaking of that revolution, Capital Pride has found himself in hot water as more and more people are waking up to the radical rot within its ranks. The very same radicals, following the very same rules, have completely taken over the event. And they are losing sponsors at a glorious rate after the release of their pro-Palestine statement. So the statement claims, part of the growing Islamophobic sentiment we are seeing is fueled by pinkwashing of the war in Gaza and racist notions that all Palestinians are homophobic and transphobic, by portraying itself as a protector of the rights of queer and trans people in the Middle East. Israel seeks to draw attention away from its abhorrent human rights abuses against Palestinians. We refuse to be complicit in this violence. Indeed, to withhold our solidarity from Palestinians in the name of upholding two LGBTQIA rights betrays the promise of liberation that guides our work. Key word here, liberation, that guides their work. We join our voices in the calls for greater protection of civilians and reject any attempt to use devastating conflict as a pretext to advance hate. What has this got to do with Pride in Ottawa? This is a conflict overseas. There are lots of things going on in the heat of war. So I'm not claiming one support for one side or the other here. But what I find really interesting to highlight is that, to me, this is the embodiment of the Solinsky. Again, clearly, Hamas wouldn't hesitate to dispose gay, queer, and trans people from their earthly presence. But as we've established, no one is free until we are all free, which means that the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. So it seems that finally, many people have started to twig that Pride has become something entirely different, and they're not all that happy about it. I created a list of the sponsors that have dropped out of the festival. It could be comprehensive, or maybe it's missing some, but this is the list of the ones that I'm currently aware of, the sponsors that have currently dropped out. So we have Mayor Mark Sutcliffe, City of Ottawa, Liberal Party of Canada, Ontario Liberal Party, Jewish Federation of Ottawa, CHEO Hospital, the Ottawa Hospital, the Royal Ottawa Mental Hospital. I'm not sure if those are the same ones. You'd have to correct me. The Montfort Hospital, Ottawa Tourism, Bank of Canada, Giant Tiger, Loblaws, IKEA, TD Bank, LCBO, University of Ottawa, Carleton University, Algonquin College, the U.S. Embassy, Public Service Pride Network. That's an interesting one. Conseil des écoles publiques de l'Est de l'Ontario, Conseil des écoles catholiques du Centre-Est, Ottawa Carleton District School Board. Now, that may be all the school boards in Ottawa, I'm not sure. And the Canadian Automobile Association. That is a lot of sponsors that have said, oh, hell no. So it appears that the councillors-in-chief, the social justice warrior councillors-in-chief, have been cancelled, and they are not very happy about their own tactics being turned against them. So here's a quote from the Ottawa Citizen. Some, including queer activists, who've marched in the Pride parade for decades, are angry at Pride, saying it should have stayed in its lane and not involved itself in such complicated and contentious issues. They're not necessarily opposed to the group's stance, but rather the fact that it publicly took a position in the first place. Their job is to run a festival and parade, one said, period. But they don't see their jobs as just running a parade. They see their jobs as creating a revolution. They're telling you in that statement, it's about the liberation for everyone. It's about nobody's free until we're all free. And when people start really understanding this, this is where we're going to turn it around. So I, for one, am reveling in watching the marvelous histrionic implosion of the radical leftist cultural socialist movement that we call social justice. May their ideology die a swift and unimpressive death. Now, the reason this whole house of communist cards is falling down is because people have had enough of the rampant Jew hatred that we're seeing among radicals. Now, I originally thought that it would be the sexualizing and transing of kids as young as kindergarten that would do it. But, hey-ho, I've got to take victories when they manifest. The only way the societal backlash sticks is if we, normal people, ordinary people of Canada, take seriously our civic duties and have our voices heard. So what can you do? You can tell your local MP, call them up, write them a letter, advocate against cultural socialism. Teach yourself what that actually means. Eric Kaufman has a great book out right now that will go through the ins and outs and give you all the details. It's called The Great Awakening, a 12-step plan to something, something or other. Inform yourself about these issues so that when you speak to those MPs, you are clear in your messaging. Let them know that it's not okay for this stuff to be advancing within institutions, things like education, public sector institutions, private enterprise. You could even send them videos of my channel where I cover some of these topics. Talk to your friends. Talk to family. I know it can be uncomfortable to talk to neighbors as well, but talk to people. You don't even have to be full on. Just mention, have you noticed it's kind of weird what's going on? Make sure that you vote. Some elections are coming up and it's really important for us all to vote. There is abysmally low voter turnout. So if you want to have your voice heard, the best way to get the political change is to actually have your voice heard at the ballot. So if you can, join or start a local community group. Look, this ends when we make it end. But that means we have to take our civic duty seriously and stop taking for granted that others will do it for us. Okay, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this shorter format, and I will see you in the next one.